Happy birthday. Thank you.
We are officially live streaming. I know. We're ready to go. All right, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's CSC Bylaws Committee meeting. The time now is 4 p.m. and today's date is November the 16th, and we are calling the meeting to order. So I don't see any audience participants here, but if anybody does come in, I'm just letting them know to please fill out a form for us. And then there will be multiple opportunities for comments throughout the meeting. To my wonderful committee members, just to keep order between us, please, please remember to use your pen.
Already got one.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. Thank you all very much. All right, Ms. Clay, will you please do a roll call for me?
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Watt?
Here.
Dr. Green?
Yeah,
Have a quorum.
we have a quorum. All right, sounds good. All right, it is now time to approve the agenda.
Madam Chair, I'll move the agenda.
All right, do we have a second? We have a motion by Mr. Mitchell, a second by Mr. Watts. The agenda is now approved. All right, it is now time for a general public comment. Do we have anything that's been submitted to be read?
No public comment.
No public comment. All right, wonderful. Thank you so very much. All right, it is now time for a review of our bylaws. I'm going to turn it over to our executive director.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Glenn. So we will do a review of the bylaws. I did send the committee members a revised version that has our logo on there, and it did shift the page number or two. And then also I did a little bit more formatting. So in your packet, you have the revised version starting on page 1 of 9. And then when you get to all those red marks, all of that on that first page is nothing but formatting and tabs and all of that.
Okay.
So what I thought we would do is we would go ahead and combine agenda item A and B so that you can ask questions along the way as we go through. So if we go to the first page under the preamble, I am just a stickler for numbers. So I added the 2018 for our ordinance. And I added youth and families residing in to make it very clear that we are servicing children, youth, and families residing in Leon County. That's under preamble.
Madam Chair, that's Ms. Green, a quick question.
Sure.
Would it be easier, Sika, do you think, for us to follow along on the edited version? I'm trying to go back and forth, and I'm like, well, why don't I just?
It would be easier to do the track changes.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. So now we'll move to Article 1, membership and term of office. We put board in, so because we had council for the school board and the board of county commissioners, so I made that congruent with what their actual names are there. When we move to Article 2, meetings. So this is where the council decided we would go to 2 meetings a quarter. And so the way I have always been taught that you keep your bylaws broad so that you don't have to always keep coming back and changing them. So my suggested language is regular meetings of the council shall be held at least quarterly instead of twice quarterly, because if something happens and you have to cancel one, you're technically outside of your bylaws. So that's where that changed. And I also like to cite any places in the bylaws where it pertains to the section. So when you get to that third sentence, at which time the election shall take place in accordance with Article 4, Section 1, which in our bylaws governs the election of officers.
I do have a question. So I do remember at our last meeting, we completely agreed to do the twice quarterly meetings. There is nothing in the legislation that indicates that we have to meet more often than this, correct? Okay, just wanted to make sure that's.
I reviewed both our statute 125.901 and our ordinance with Leon County, which is 1803. There is nothing that says how often you have to meet. But in your original bylaw, you decided you'd meet monthly with no more than 60 days between the meetings. So now that we're looking at meeting twice a quarter, the first month of the quarter and the last month of the quarter, I actually went through and counted days. It ends up being about 63 days, one quarter, 65 days, another quarter. So this is why in the last sentence, I changed it to 90 days, so that we're not out of compliance.
Well, that's right. And that keeps us quarterly. Anyway, even if things are rocking along 4 years from now and they just want to meet once every quarter, they're fine.
So
They're-
Yeah.
Okay.
All right,
Madam Chair, may I
yes,
ask make a note? In that section, in the tail end there where it says in no case shall the council go longer than 90 days between meetings. My thought is, rather than couching that in terms of absolutes and having some unforeseen event come up with a hurricane
Mhm.
where all meetings have to be canceled and somehow we're technically in violation of our bylaws. Maybe we could include something in there to the effect of barring emergency cancellations or other extraordinary circumstances, the council shall meet no less often than once each fiscal quarter.
You
That's
want to
why
send
you're
us that
here.
wording? That's why you're here.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay,
That's great.
so we will have Chris and the wording to add to that so that we take into consideration Idalia and all that other stuff that tends to come our way.
And then can I ask anecdotally, do we know whether or not any of the other sister Children's Services Council likewise meet on a quarterly basis?
Yeah, there's some that meet quarterly, there's some that meet every other month. There's some that hold their business meeting 1 month and only a workshop the second month. So that's why I went back and read the statute very clearly. Each community can do what works best for them. All right, so if we go under special meetings, I just made a clarification. In that first sentence, meetings or any recessed or reconvened meeting must be advertised at least 7 days in advance of such meeting in the newspaper. And then we'll turn the page. And under public meetings, section 4, again, I'm a little OCD, so I just put the AP in there. Under minutes, section 5, so the second sentence, minutes shall record the vote of each member present on all matters on which the council acts. Under voting, so that this is a sentence like the rest of these, I just changed it to a quorum shall be established at each meeting of the council to transact business. I broke that up into 2 sentences. So a quorum shall be established, and then the presence of a majority of all members serving on the council shall constitute a quorum.
Now, let me ask a question, please. No worries at all.
Yeah, no, I'm not mad at all.
So my question
That's
is,
why we're here.
if we don't have a quorum, we can still meet. We can't vote though, right? That's my understanding. All right, is that considered business if we're still meeting, if we're not voting? That's a question.
So generally, the discussions, to the extent you're discussing a matter that will come back before the full board in the absence of a quorum, you're supposed to replicate that before the full board. It's difficult to do that, right?
Yeah.
Questions are asked, discussion is had. The safest course is if you don't have the quorum.
Don't meet. Okay,
And we have had that in the past. And our general counsel advised us that we do not have quorum, therefore we should not move forward.
And Jacinta, this is for you. Minutes shall record the vote of each member present on all matters on which the council acts, including things like the agenda, the minutes. The process has been up to this point, we really are never taking votes. There's it's sort of in absence of an objection, show the item approved. So for your purposes, you would then have everyone present voting yes or voting no if it was unanimous. Okay, all right.
Mr. Wells.
Yes,
Oh,
It's okay, no.
I was recognizing that.
you're the treasurer, you can do it. Is it appropriate to reference the opinion on the virtual piece here?
I know you have a concern, so let's have that conversation right
Okay.
now. I think it is appropriate.
Okay, well, not necessarily concerned, just saying like if
Yeah,
it is that
concern
we need
is
a
not the right word.
Yeah, I mean,
Discussion.
should we reference that here? So, I think after talking the opinion is that if in order for someone to vote virtually, we need a quorum in person as well. So I was just wondering
Yes.
if we need to have that documented as our.
Yeah, I agree.
Is that what this statute says? Does it contemplate Zoom meetings now? So in order to establish a quorum, the quorum has to be physically present. They can't be virtual.
With a small number of exceptions. One is for certain interlocal entities, which we don't fit within.
Right.
The other is if the governor should enter an executive order suspending the in-person requirement to the.
Right.
The law is, as by our state attorney general, who publishes the Sunshine Act, is that if a physical quorum is present, those present can determine whether or not extraordinary circumstances warrant someone being able to participate remotely. It shouldn't be something that's done as a matter of convenience. If a board member, for instance, suffering from COVID and was well enough to participate and wanted to participate, but didn't really make sense to have them here, that would be the type of extraordinary circumstance by which you would say, if someone had a prior engagement or party, they could slip outside and take it. That might not constitute extraordinary circumstances. But at the end of the day, if the board determines it's reasonable for somebody to be able to participate on occasion, remotely, you can, provided you have the quorum in person. And to your comment, it seems like we could model that here. It might make sense to reference in accordance with something effective, in accordance with existing sunshine law, because if there were to be a change in the law in the future, who knows, maybe we're moving more and more to a virtual society, maybe the law will change, then our bylaws would automatically allow for that.
Okay.
So that's, and two, if you like, I can take a step.
Please.
Okay, so, yeah, take a stab at that and we'll put that right here. Or wherever you deem would be best in here.
No, I think that's fine. That's the spot for it. And in that section, which is A, my thought is the presence of a majority of all members serving. Can we say of all members then serving, which kind of captures the fact that we might be 8 instead of 10?
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
Due to resignations.
Yes.
So, Mr. Rowe, what you're suggesting there is that those members present have to vote to determine that it's an extraordinary set of circumstances for someone to participate virtually. So, and that's not reflected here. So, and we've never taken a vote. I think there's been 2 occasions where someone has appeared virtually. I would have voted yes. I think everybody else would have, so we're safe there. But if that is the case where we are required to take a vote to make that, that should happen at the beginning of the meeting, and
That's right.
it should be put in here. Okay. And I'm looking more, Chris, at you, because as you're working on all this, just making sure that that's also contemplated in it.
So I do have a question, given what you just said. Chris, would that better go under public meetings? Establishing that, or I'm gonna let you figure out where that goes.
Yeah,
Yeah, let's
I think you're right, actually. The section, Article 3 is particular to the voting.
It's particular to voting, whereas section 4 talks about the public meetings, and maybe that would be a better place to put that information.
Right.
Okay.
I'll include that under section.
So when we get the draft revised, since we're talking about it, we'll send that back out because we'll need to send it along with the draft resolution, because we have to approve this by resolution at our meeting in December.
So the only reason I kind of still go back to 3 under voting is A, is a quorum shall be established at each meeting. This sort of, I don't care. It doesn't really matter to me what you call it. It just,
As long as it's there.
as long as it's there,
Yeah.
and then the quorum can make a determination if someone who would fall normally outside of the quorum is entitled to vote.
That's good.
Any other questions? Okay.
All right, so then the next thing you'll see in F, I just took the ampersand out and made that and. And then in H, under that same article, the judge of juvenile cases appointed to the council shall not vote on nor participate in setting up the millage. So that's very clear.
I did have something.
Yeah.
I meant to send this earlier, but now I got to overanalyzing, and I'm good either way, right? I just want to bring this up as a topic piece. For F, the Department of Children and Families appointing to the council shall not vote on the hiring and dismissal of an executive director. And I knew that was there, but then I got to thinking about it. should then whoever it is, should they participate in the evaluation process?
I was just gonna say, I don't remember the genesis of this requirement. Is this a statutory? This is under 125-901. Okay.
Well, okay, but then let's present company excluded. Your replacement, whenever, you know, you decide to retire. Let's say that the executive committee is making a recommendation for termination of the executive director. That would mean that it requires 2 of the 3 members of the executive committee which means that the way we are constituted right now, it would require Dr. Glenn and I to be on the same side because Mr. Watts is a member of the executive committee.
And if you are split, then the motion fails.
Exactly. So.
And that's only the situation because he's on the executive committee. I mean, which is, it can happen, yeah.
Okay.
But going back to what he said, if the participant from the Children and Families cannot vote on the hiring or dismissal, a part of me feels as if you should not be a part of the evaluation process because you can influence what is being said with regards to their dismissal or any action.
I think there's a difference. And the reason I think there's a difference is that let's just talk about hiring.
Yeah.
There's no evaluation to be done.
Well, not for hiring.
So let's take that one. A termination. The number one, I think that all members are entitled to say how they think the person is doing, that the executive director is performing, saying whether they're performing at a level, like it's a pretty extreme action to take on firing someone, you know, terminating someone's employment. Having the do the evaluation, it isn't a determining factor as to whether or not that person stays on or leaves. It's just they're evaluating, period. They're doing their evaluation. The decision, the vote on hiring or firing, or pardon me, just firing in this case, is I don't know why that person wouldn't have a role in.
So here's my view on this, and I totally understand what you're saying, and I'm not arguing either way. But so let's, prime example, this is just an example. If Terrence had a significant issue with Sika's performance, right? And he does the evaluation and he rates her poorly, and then it comes back to the council and we're having a discussion about it. How he feels about her will have a significant impact, I would feel, on the rest of the board members who will then make a vote on the hiring and firing of the executive director. So if he can't, and let's read this again, if he can't participate in it, do we still give him the option to influence the other board members' decision on dismissal?
So to me, the answer is yes, and I'm going to use, I always like to use other examples in government that I know. Both the Office of Insurance Regulation and the Office of Financial Regulation have a commissioner. Both the governor and the CFO have to be on the prevailing side to hire and fire, which means that once you hire someone, it's now we're talking about termination, it requires both of them to be on the prevailing side. So both have to vote to fire.
Get rid of.
The Agriculture Commissioner and the Attorney General are also part of the Financial Services Commission, which ultimately hires the and fires, because they need a third to do it. So they have a voice in this, although they don't have sort of veto power over it. So if they want to, they can. If the governor and the CFO, if either of them says no, then it doesn't really matter what anybody else wants, including the other governor or CFO. Let's just say It's the CFO who wants to fire Terrence, the insurance commissioner.
Okay,
It would. His opinion might be swayed by the agriculture commissioner and the attorney general, but they really don't have. They don't have the same kind of vote that the CFO and the governor do.
but that's not the case here though, right?
Yes, it is. They still have a vote. Ultimately, they would have a vote. It's the governor and the CFO sort of have veto power. So let's just say the attorney general had a problem with the insurance commissioner. She can talk about it until she's blue in the face. But ultimately, her vote, because she doesn't really get the same kind of vote that the CFO and governor,
Okay.
she can influence it. And I think she's a member of that governing board, right? But ultimately, it falls to the CFO and the governor. So in this case, it would fall to the CSC minus the children and family representative.
Okay.
But I would still want his opinion, especially on a board like this. I think the reason that they have it is the potential for a conflict. I don't know exactly what that conflict would be.
Yeah.
Like, why would they? I get the judge not voting on a tax.
Right.
I don't know why the CSC would not, allow the designee, but I would want, the children and families appointee, their opinion, even if they couldn't vote on it. I'd still want,
To know, to hear how they
and by the
feel.
way, under most circumstances, the evaluation is a good process. If I'm the executive director, I also would like to know what one of my board members, what all of my board members think of my performance.
Okay, that's fine, and I'm glad, I love the example that you gave, because that makes sense, but I was just thinking, wow, and it has nothing to do with the individuals here, yeah, at all, yeah, but, I was just thinking, do I want them to be able to influence what I think? But no, I agree, I agree that I would want to hear what they have to say, because that will help me make a determination as to how I vote. So anyway, okay, I withdraw my comment. Okay, I am convinced that.
Mr. We're looking to see if that's in statute.
Yeah.
Yeah, we determined that the statute has been amended a couple times over the past couple of years since the bylaws were prepared, and we're not seeing that requirement.
It's out?
That
Oh,
this. there
you
needs to be
raised the
an-
last 5 minutes.
And in fact, based on the sunshine law, if you are present, you cannot abstain from voting on a matter unless there's an express statutory provision that says you must, like in the case of the judge, abstaining from village, that's here. So I'll look further into it, but at least at this point, it looks like there's,
Strike it.
So
Yeah.
that we've had substantive change.
That
Okay.
works.
So I'm gonna circle.
You're in.
Yeah.
And
glad you
Chris will
brought it
do
Yeah, I mean,
the
I
due
never-
diligence on that, and if it
Okay.
is not in the most current version
Yeah.
of the statute,
The whole thing will be.
we will take that out.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you.
While I don't influence the bylaws, I would want to hear from.
that's done.
Okay.
I just want to hear the tax.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
Cool.
to clarify my position, working in state government, evaluations, like I do them, use them, and so I would give her a 2. Not her, whoever it
Yeah,
is,
I get
I would give the person a 2, right? Like, I'm suggesting that there's some type of corrective action plan that's required, so when I first came onto the council, I saw that. I didn't research where it was, I just thought it was what it was, but I figured I would bring it up now, because I've been,
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought it up, because it made them check.
So-
Yeah.
fixed
All right.
that.
Thank
That's
you.
why we're here.
Whoever
And
was
every
writing the
year. we have
statute.
to-
The two of us are seeing eye to eye on this.
Okay, so we went through that. So now we're on Article 4, officers election, vacancies and committees. So under section 1, the officers of this council shall be chosen from its membership and consist of a chair, vice chair with a hyphen, and treasurer. Officers shall be elected to a term of 2 years. I thought that just needed to be clear. It was
Okay.
a little murky, okay? Then on the next page, it delineates all of you all's responsibilities. You'll just see some formatting stuff in there. On D, In the event of a vacancy in the positions of chair, vice chair, or treasurer, the position shall be filled at the next meeting of the members for the remainder of the vacant position's term. Then any vacancy in other offices that result from that selection may be filled by an immediate election. I just thought that was clearer.
Yeah, it is.
All right, so then we're okay with elections, then we get down.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so however you want to do it, because your graph is a lot better than mine, but I thought it read easier too, that the position shall be filled for the remainder of the vacant position's term at the next meeting.
Okay, so you
Yeah,
want to.
Just switch it around, but
Yeah,
it's the
switch it.
same thing.
Gotcha.
All right.
That's the object of the verb, the
Yes.
preposition.
Yes.
And you have you have to say it a couple times
To
to
make
make
it
sure it's not too
yeah.
far removed from the verb. Councilmember Mitchell will appreciate that because we have
Exactly.
lots of conversations about this.
Yes, we have.
So let's go to section 3, vacancies in council. Council member vacancies shall be filled as soon as practically available. I just, changed that. All right, so then we go to page 6. The permanent committee shall be, if you remember, we decided that we would get rid of program services.
Right.
And so executive committee, we're adding, the executive committee shall conduct an annual review of the bylaws and make recommendations for changes as needed. We just moved that.
Would you consider
Yeah,
periodic instead of annual, just to give yourself flexibility?
periodic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I really don't see, I mean, it would be a very short meeting, but
We'll periodically review it.
I,
And we don't have to call a bylaws meeting.
that's really what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to see, an extraordinary set of circumstances
Yeah.
for me attending a party at 4 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon.
All right.
I know something, yes. There must be something I'm doing a year from now.
Number C. Number C.
Letter C.
Letter C. Just ad hoc committees shall not be established for a period of time exceeding 1 year. Now, this was something you all put in there. I think ad hoc committees normally should not exceed more than a year. Okay,
Yeah.
so want to make sure that that's there. The council also may designate persons not on the council. So I do want to stop here. So when we brought this up at the last council meeting, it was a resounding no. Do you want to leave this here in the instance that at some point you want to do that?
No, I think it was a resounding no to sit on the committees. On these committees, the committees mentioned here.
Mhm.
At least the voices in the room were against that, but they were very much in favor of
Of other-
the evaluation committees, the
Okay.
things that were,
Perfect.
so I personally
Perfect.
would stick with it, but
Okay. I agree with it. I just wanted to make sure because I remember there was still a conversation. But it could also mean your ad hoc committees, which the evaluation committees, it could be a special event committee or something. So, yeah,
Just-
okay.
It could be I'm sorry, go ahead,
No,
go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm changing the topic just a little bit.
Okay.
Still on this, but go
Okay,
ahead.
okay. So, program services committee
it's no more.
is no more.
Right.
Okay, all right.
So we're going to the same place.
Where are we going to the?
Yeah, we're going to the
All right.
exact same
Well,
place.
I'll let you
Okay,
continue on the journey.
so my question is, since we're dissolving the bylaws committee and the program services committee, do we have to say in our bylaws that we have, so they just went away, like we didn't say,
You don't have to.
okay, I just wanted to make sure, so,
We are
Please.
revising the bylaws
Okay.
to be what they are.
so we assign the responsibility of the bylaws to the executive committee.
Mhm.
We're rolling the program services into the work of the council, and we just aren't mentioning them as a committee because we have other ways of managing it. Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because I was like, we never said what we did with them, and do we have to say that?
And so the question came up at the meeting, at the larger council meeting, about a conversation with Councilmember Jones, because he was the
Yeah.
chair of program services. So I did have another conversation with him. He likes the idea of using that first meeting in the quarter. And we had discussed about allowing him to lead that conversation.
Yeah.
So he is 100%
He's good
on
with that.
board with
Okay.
that, yeah.
The program services
Mhm.
dissolved, absorbed by now
It's
staff.
full council,
council.
Mhm,
full council discussion.
mhm,
So staff does our part in preparing information.
mhm.
And then when we present it to you, you as a council digest it, review it, and then make the decision.
But
So
you-
it's taking that step out
Mhm.
of
Program services.
going to
committee.
the program services committee. There is this exhaustive conversation.
Right,
And if the full council either doesn't have the time to go back and look at the committee meeting, can't go back and, then we get here and there are lots of questions that are there, and there's a level of discomfort because they did not hear the whole conversation.
but community persons could possibly participate in the
Yeah.
staffing to what you guys.
Or in the conversation period, so we have public comment. So you don't just have to have public comment when you're voting.
Mhm,
You can have public comment and interaction at any point. So even though there will be discussions about what we're doing, the public will have opportunities to opine on those discussions.
And it's, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Go ahead.
all right, I'm almost finished. I guess what I'm getting at is, okay, when you have the program services committee, I'm all for being like, I'm there, we're there, we're good.
Yeah.
What I think though was somewhat helpful and valuable is when you did have
Presentation.
and or people from the community that were a part of or participate in the program services.
And we'll still do
We
that.
still have.
Okay, so that,
Yeah.
okay,
We have some on the schedule for January.
okay, so I just clarifying
still
that
do
that's
that.
still, okay.
And I do see, and I just want to comment, even, so part of our meetings will be workshop type
Yeah,
meetings.
most
So
of it is gonna
they-
be more of a
It's still a
workshop.
program
Mhm.
services workshop with everybody present. And they, to me,
Right.
that's wide open for community participation, experts coming and talking to us about what we're doing. That's not gonna go away. That's
Yeah.
still a part, and everybody gets to hear that conversation.
Okay, I got it.
Got it.
So I think by me holding off until you just made that comment, you may have answered my question. We're gonna have 2 meetings a quarter, at least 1 meeting a quarter. But the plan is to have 2 meetings a quarter. One will be a real business meeting where it's voting on the big stuff, awarding an ITN, awarding an RFP, whatever it is. One will be sort of a program services committee on steroids, where it's a workshop where we take sort of the Liza McFadden model, where we engage and have conversations, and all led by, in this case, Mr. Jones, kind of keeping us on track, and where we have members of the public who have, a special knowledge on an area come in and present to us, and then participate in the workshop meeting. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
This is my vision of it. So like you said, 1 meeting, nothing's changed. It's a full-blown council meeting. The second meeting, if we have council business, it will be abbreviated. Let's do a quick council meeting. We end and then turn it over to Mr. Jones. Let's have the full-blown workshop for the program services committee where everybody's there and we welcome other people. So we get both with everybody present.
Right.
And I think that would prevent a lot of issues we had with people not being connected to decisions and things that were happening.
It also eliminates sort of excessive meetings, and not that I don't love spending time with members of, this council, but there were a lot of, and if you weren't on that, you were on a whole bunch of others, you're like, oh,
Yeah.
right.
Absolutely.
So that I love
That's
that.
the plan.
Okay.
So ideally, the first meeting of the quarter is the workshop meeting.
Okay.
The second meeting of the quarter is the business meeting. And so as we are finishing the priority focus, we will time things so that the approvals happen the second meeting, the business meeting. But a lot of the discussion happens that first.
But if the nice.
But if
thing
it
is,
doesn't, it's all
to the
noticed.
chair's
That's right.
point, we are.
Yep, if we have an
Meeting,
Conversation, right,
yeah.
Yeah.
it will still be noticed
Yes,
as a council meeting.
correct.
So that if we need to conduct business, we'll
Still do it.
Gotcha. God bless you.
God bless you.
It's okay? Yeah, if I sound excited about that, I'm very excited about that. Okay, so is
Number 2, section.
number 5, Article 5, Section 2, reporting. I just changed that to board because that's what they are. Then we get to not really anything on page 7.
I do have something.
Yeah.
Please.
Okay, this is not an insult to anybody or future board members. So for the evaluation, so I keep going back.
What section are you?
I'm on section 6, employment of
Okay.
executive director.
Mhm.
And for D, establish policies, procedures relating to the evaluation. And I'm not necessarily saying that this, if you know what I'm proposing goes here, but I do have a suggestion. That, and I'm going back to the first evaluation process that we went through. And so, again, not insult to anybody on the board, but I do feel that it's appropriate, could be appropriate for some type of training, if you will, and maybe that's you, Mr. Rowe, to be provided to the council around evaluations. And I'll give my justification for that, which is, when I first started in a supervisory role years ago, and got, start doing evaluations. It is can lead you into a very, tricky situation. If let's say you're having an issue with an executive director or whomever, and you've rated them 5 from the start, right? And there's no justification you want to look. I think that ratings mean something. It shouldn't just be willy-nilly. It should be like you should really, if you're giving a 5, know why you're giving a 5 to whomever. And vice versa. What does that look like giving a 2? So if somebody on this council were to try to give the executive director a 2, and you need some type of justification, it can't just be out of the blue. You've never had any discussions with the executive director for, the whole time, and then at the time evaluation, give them 2. It doesn't work that way. From a, they could contest that all day. You never brought to my attention that you had an issue with me coming to X or not showing up to X, Y, and Z. So I think that folks have an understanding of that could go a long way. Not to say that the staff, the council does not, but it is something I've been thinking about since that last process.
I do have a comment. Isn't there something in there, and I can't remember what the rating is, I really can't, but if they rate a 2 or 1, they have to provide comment as to why that the score is low. So at least those instructions are there, but I do like the idea.
Okay, so let me add on that. The instructions are there, but what I'm saying is, if, let's say we got to this point right here, for whatever reason, you want to give Sika a 2, time we just did evaluations. But you gave her a 2 on something, but you never had a discussion with her about that 2 situation, the whole period.
And all of a sudden it's a surprise.
You have a hard time valid.
But the executive director is an at-will employee. So Sika couldn't do it to one of the other employees. I don't disagree. All supervisors were put through supervisory training, especially when the rating scale came in for evaluations. I think it's a terrific idea, but if a board member wants to give an excellent 1 year and then 1 year later give a needs improvement and have never said anything, by virtue of the fact that the executive director is an at-will employee, I don't think they're required to provide any conversation in between. By the way, it is, as a supervisor, a good thing, but remember, that all goes through the chair with an executive director. It's sort of like if I had a problem, Sika was, doing a lousy job presenting on behalf of the CSC at public meetings, and
These are
they're
just
showing
examples.
oh yes,
Okay.
please. That's why I picked this particular one. You know, and, you know, she's having a hard time stringing a few sentences together to say something, or ending sentences and prepositions. Which we know we have.
She does not have.
Anyhow, if last year she didn't, and this year she was having. I have an obligation to, I can say something to her, but at some point. I have, as a board member, am required to bring it up in like an executive committee meeting, or I say to the chair, because it's the chair who does her evaluation, remember, or the evaluation of the executive director. I don't want to personalize it with this particular executive director. So it all needs to kind of funnel through the chair. And again, I support the idea of putting people through some sort of a basic supervisory training, but I think, and Mr. Roy, you may correct me, but because she's an at-will employee, you can just wake up one day and it's not a responsible way of acting, but
Yeah.
May I add one
Please, go ahead.
thing? Also in my contract, there is a stipulation that if, of course, I can't remember verbatim, but if there is a 2 or a 1 or a corrective act, there is a period of time that I have to be consulted about what it is that is displeasurable before you can put. The executive director has to be consulted on what is not working for a particular council member before there can be any kind of corrective action or anything like that. I'm just gonna be honest, I haven't really paid attention to it. I probably should, but I haven't. So, Chris, I don't, but I think training is always, good,
Yeah.
you know, for sure, but,
And that makes sense. The objective of that would be to give you an opportunity to cure the deficiency before you receive a formal demerit. For it. I'm very, very happy to do that. And it could take a couple forms. It could be a formal 10 or 15-minute session during one of the board's full meetings, or maybe something along the line about bullet point summary of the guidelines that could be included each time I send out the annual evaluation. Bear in mind, these are the things to consider as you complete the evaluation form, which is also attached.
Mr. Ray, you know what I think would be a good idea, Madam Chair, is we do for sort of a continuing ed portion of one of those workshop meetings, or it could be a business meeting that looks, you know, fairly short, but a reminder of what government in the sunshine provisions are, a reminder of what it means. And I don't want it to be right on the heels or the toes of the evaluation, but somewhere, you know, yeah.
I'm thinking the annual meeting, to me, that makes a logical time to when, unfortunately, we just had it. We can still do it, but I think when you do your update on, you know, this is the sunshine law, this is, you know, that's a good time to remind us of everything that we should be doing.
Conflicts of interest, all of that.
At one time, yeah.
Yeah, October, the annual meeting's October.
That's our
Makes
annual
perfect sense.
Right. That's time to do it.
Okay, don't shoot me. Okay, so.
Great idea.
So, and this is like for future, because like, you know, have new people applying,
Yeah.
right? To be a part of council. Would it go in the bylaws, maybe like as an orientation? Like, would there be a?
so we have been in the process of just kind of putting together what's called a new council member orientation. Because we know we're going to get new council members, we absolutely could add that. I was gonna say Rowe. Mr. Rowe, normally does it's not a training, but a discussion with new council members as well as new team members about government in the sunshine, public records laws. For council members, we can absolutely add that to their orientation.
Should that be in the bylaw that for your new council member orientation is completed within such and such a time somewhere?
I like that idea, and some sort of a, you know, a signed acknowledgement that we've gone through these things, you know. It was provided and I've read it. When we make them sign it's just board to it. A conflict of interest attestation of some sort?
We
I
Yes.
do
we
on
can
the,
find something.
okay,
Never
I
know.
know.
So,
Every board I sit on.
yeah,
Yeah.
you have to do
Yeah.
that.
Part of that training involves not really sunshine law and book records, but the ethics.
The ethics,
Yes,
Yeah.
okay, all right. So that's great. See, no shooting.
Well, I mean, you know, just
So-
covering myself.
So may I ask Chris to determine
The
where
best place.
best to put that
Yeah.
in the bylaws? Yeah, I like that idea.
Because that would have been helpful for me coming on, you know, we were just kind of throwing it there.
Wasn't anybody to
Yeah.
worry, you guys.
That's awesome.
It's something for you.
It's so important, baptism by fire, by fire.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No.
Councilmember Watts, okay, so we move to page 8 and under G, I put perform other administrative duties as may normally be performed by an administrative officer, just to make that clear. Conflicts of interest under B, members of the council, and if you'll see, I added in contractor, just to be clear. And those are the substantive changes. When you get to page 9, under amendments, I did put revised, approved and adopted, and Chris, I don't know if we need to put revised in there at the very end, the attestation that our chair will sign
Sorry. I don't see
on
this.
page 9,
Very bottom.
at the very bottom, I added revised, approved and adopted.
Need to.
Don't need to do that. And then in the footer, I did
Oh, yeah,
put
we-
the original approval date
Yeah.
and the revised date.
That
Yeah.
will change to 2023.
Okay, yeah, in 2023.
As soon as they're approved and adopted,
Then we're
it's
done,
automatic.
okay, so we can take revised out. And
Your mother would
Madam,
be very happy avoiding unnecessary, conflicts.
yeah, she would be very happy.
Yes.
Mom, this is for you.
That's for you.
So that concludes the revisions to the bylaw. Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion questions? You good? All right. Thank you very much. That was very thorough.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate
Are
that.
we going to vote to recommend these to the, okay,
At the December meeting.
Madam Chair, are you looking for a motion for us to? Okay, I would like to,
We got to do public comment.
Comment first, yeah, okay. Thank you, we're good. So Miss Clay, do we have any public comments? No public comments, all right. So we are now ready to entertain a motion and a second to approve the revised bylaws.
The recommendation to approve.
I would like to move as amended today and to include Mr. Rowe's additions.
All right, we have a motion on the table to approve the currently revised with the additions that we expect to include for Mr. Rowe. So we have a second by Mr. Watts. I am assuming there's no dissent here. So that is now approved. And it is our expectation that we would get to see the final revisions.
Yes,
And then we would bring them forward as a recommendation to the full council at the December 21st.
yes. So the process is we'll get the revised revisions done. This will still be marked as draft.
Okay.
It will be accompanied by a draft resolution because your bylaws have to be approved by resolution.
Okay.
We will send that to the full county for them to read, council for them to read prior to the meeting and the meeting packet, and then have any discussion at meeting.
So in this case, we are actually bringing the resolution 23-019, whatever number we're at, to the December 21st
Yes.
meeting for full adoption.
Yep.
Fantastic.
So you basically approve
How good.
a recommendation.
Committee.
Yep.
I appreciate that. That's great. And what I would like, but when it goes to the full council, I do think that they should see the changes. So just like we had, I mean, it was very helpful to see the track changes. I do think they deserve to see the same thing.
Figured
All
out how
right.
to save it as a PDF so you can see the changes in case anyone wants to know. If you track changes and save it as a PDF regular, it's gonna take all the changes. You
Okay.
can't see them, so there's a special trick. You
I
wanna
can
know
figure that out. Awesome. All right. Thank you very much for that.
I'll call Holly. They'll know how to work on that cell and edit and whatever.
Enable editing.
Enable editing. Wow, that's a very important button.
So the next agenda item is our next meeting date, but given that we have resolved the bylaws committee, this is formally, our last and final bylaws committee meeting.
I'll see you periodically.
Yes. Absolutely, absolutely. All right, sounds good. All right, so with that, we do not have another meeting agenda. Do we have any member comments before we dismiss?
Madam Chair, I do, I'm curious where we are, just because the conversation of new board members coming forward, where are we with the county and their advertising of the 3 positions? Have we gotten Madam Chair's application in on?
Yeah, so I spoke with.
Okay, but, go ahead.
So I spoke with Nikki Payton, Miss Nikki Payton at the county.
Right.
She just called to see if there was anything else that we needed, and I expressed to her your sentiments and the discussion that we had at the last council meeting. She is taking that back to County Manager Long, Vince Long, and I have a meeting with the new chair of the County Commission Chief of Staff to discuss that. And get that on the radar. So at this point, the county did say that they sent the 9 names up to the appointments office.
Right.
And so she was calling to see if we had heard anything, and we hadn't heard anything. So
Perhaps one member of the council has, which is why I was encouraging, yes.
mhm. So as soon as I get on Chauncey's schedule, Mr. Hayes' schedule, then that's one of the items that we'll discuss.
Sounds good. Would you be able to provide an update at the December meeting?
I
We should
hope
have
so.
some information by
I
then.
hope
That'd be
that's
great.
something that.
Thank you.
I had talked to Commissioner Maddox about this when he was still chair, and he was like, yeah, just let me know. And I said, because I like us being, kind of orderly. And by the way, I like 10 members of the council. We are missing out on the wisdom and the thoughts of 2 members of our community by, them not being on this board.
So, and I think I've said this before now. None of the CSCs, there's been one appointment in the last, maybe 9-10 months. There are some CSCs that are, risking loss of quorum. And depending on when the CSC was formed, some of those applications go straight to the governor's office. The majority go through the county commission. So there's several of us in a boat of waiting on appointments. So we're trying to have this combined effort to get whatever needs to be gotten to the governor's office so that they have the ability to make those.
Remember, rising tide lifts all ships. In this case,
Right.
we are the tide rising, much like Escambia County got their council members. We broke a record for all children's services councils when we were originally formed. I can assure you, record pace, and that will help all of the other children's services councils, perhaps. At least I'll give it a whirl.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you. Appreciate that.
No pro bono work.
All right, so if there are no other discussion questions, I'm sorry, everybody in my family is calling me right now. So the time is now 4:54 and we are now adjourned.